You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from the cinematropolis.com. Today's topic is Season 1, Episode 26, Appointment in Crime Alley. Joshua, I've got to say, moving into this one, I wasn't sure what to expect because I was thinking this was all going to be about the Wayne murders, and I mean, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't.
It does tie in, right? Like
Right.
but it's more like background radiation to the thing that is going on now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's one of those we know as Batman fans why he has an appointment on this day, and we know what Crime Alley is.
And you'll find out in the process of the episode why.
Right.
If you didn't know,
Yes.
you will be told.
Right.
But
I was, for some reason, I had in my head that I was going to see some flashbacks or something a little more specific, and we don't really get that, which is kind of cool.
it is very cool because I've seen enough Dead Waynes.
Oh my God.
I
Dead
have
Waynes.
seen enough Dead Waynes. And in this case, you get to deal with some of the earliest fallout from the Dead Waynes instead of the actual murder itself. And you get it in an interestingly detached manner.
Yes. Yeah, detached is a great word for it because we're dealing with how Batman looks at this after 20 or 30 some odd years.
Apparently 30 years, according to the narration of the episode.
Oh, 30. So yes. Oh, that's right. 30 years.
Which means Batman is approaching 40 years old.
Are you kidding
as far
me?
as the first season of
He still
is concerned.
has Superman and Justice League ahead of him. Is he fighting with Green Lantern and the Justice League at 50?
I suspect that they
How
walked
old
this
was he in
back.
Batman Beyond? Holy crap.
I feel like they probably walked this back a little bit or just didn't think about the math because it's the first season and they didn't know if they were going to have another one, and they certainly didn't have all these other shows in mind. But canonically, comic book wise at least, Bruce Wayne is 8 years old when his parents are murdered.
Right.
And they did say 30 years ago was when Park Row started its descent into Crime Alley. And again, this is more comic book than the show. The usual discussion of when Park Row becomes Crime Alley
Right.
is the murder of the Waynes.
And just if you're a listener out there who, for some reason, doesn't know Crime Alley, because we've already used it a million times, Crime Alley is, of course, where the iconic death of Thomas and Martha Wayne occurred.
Once upon a time, it was a fashionable neighborhood called Park Row, and then two millionaires were murdered on the street, leaving their only surviving son. And what do you know? It stopped being quite as fashionable.
Yes. So it got it just deteriorated quite a bit. Joshua, let's go ahead and just start with the title card. You love the title cards, and I was having a hard time figuring out what I thought about this one. A lot of, ominous for sure. Ominous.
Yeah.
The reds with the blacks are always like, ooh, feel danger.
Well, I really appreciate Gotham's red skies. We talked on an earlier episode that in the comic books now, the skies in Gotham at night are always red, and I don't know that they ever gave an explanation for this, but I kind of think BTAS is the explanation because they start with that black paper. So even at night or during the day, you have to put some color on it.
I like that too.
Yeah.
It does. The idea that's like blood or something that's
going
ominous
on.
is
It's in the atmosphere of Gotham, right?
Yeah.
So you've got that floating overhead. That's pretty great. I like the fact that on top of this ominous music, you have the buildings are like leaning in on you. You are trapped in Crime Alley. Like it looms over you,
right?
So that you can see the sky, but it's also the buildings are obscuring some of the sky. And I felt like that was really interesting for this episode because they never say, but you can make some assumptions that this was a neighborhood. So it's maybe 6 square blocks, something like that. And all of the action in this episode happens in those 6 square blocks.
Right.
And all of the things that started Bruce Wayne on the path that would make him Batman happened in these 6 square blocks.
Right.
And Daggett has focused his energy on these 6 square blocks. We are trapped there, and so are the residents. They're poor. They are disenfranchised. They can't leave. And for tonight, at least, neither can we.
Right. No, I love that idea. And it really did capture something this episode does really well. And it reminded me a lot of the Narrows, what they call it the Narrows in
Yes.
Batman Begins.
Yes.
And that's one of many strengths of that film is it really does feel like when you're in that area of Gotham
It's
City,
very claustrophobic.
Claustrophobic.
Yeah.
You feel like the whole city is collapsing and about to swallow you whole. Good
I
stuff.
don't recall if they tie the Narrows directly to the murder of the Waynes, but I definitely had Crime Alley on my mind when I was watching
Right.
Batman Begins. And I think that basically the Narrows are, how do we make this bigger than 6 square blocks?
Right.
Like
Yeah,
we need
it's like a whole
little-
island.
We need more space for the plot, but we still want it to feel like this claustrophobic,
Right.
this rat's warren of things
And
going on.
it makes me do wonder, like, because I think the image that we see in this title card, I feel like there's a for me there's a connection. This is the same feeling I get with both of those. Really brilliant stuff. So
and for Bruce Wayne too, right?
Oh, yes.
He chose this life. He made this vow. I don't think he regrets anything about his life as Batman. But nevertheless, this is the place that trapped him in this future, that created this destiny for him. This is the place where the thing that makes him who he is happened. Yeah.
trapped man.
Yeah. I don't think he laments the trap.
He embraces it.
He embraces the trap.
Yes.
But nevertheless, let's all be honest, Bruce Wayne's life is completely different if that night doesn't happen.
Right.
So,
of course. So let's go ahead and jump into the style corner. You actually already talking about the reds in the sky. It was something I made note of too. One thing I don't know if this is, I guess it definitely ties more to style than plot, but buddy, man, we got a lot of that Batmobile. This episode was all about the Batman. How many cool things can the Batmobile do? It had the most epic Batmobile entrance of any episode we've watched so far.
True.
And then it showed him like using his little grappling hook to like make sharp turns.
A little bit from Batman 89 there.
Yes, and then he stopped the train with the Batmobile.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of and then he also showed the lockup thing,
The lockdown
that we had
thing.
seen in
Yeah.
the previous I think it was 89 Batman or Batman Returns.
Batman 89 did have a much more robust lockdown, but I like this one better because the one in 89 is very much like, yeah, I'll cocoon the whole damn thing.
Right.
And this is just like, no, I'll just make it undrivable.
Yes.
It's fine.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So lots of Batmobile.
Interestingly enough, none of the Batmobile toys do any of these things.
None of them. I looked online. I was like, listen, where can I get a Batmobile that actually no, there's no grapple. Can I get a locked up Batmobile? No.
You have
can't.
some that shoot, like foam darts and stuff like that, but it's not any of this specific stuff. And you do want to think maybe it was partly to sell toys, except nobody made these toys.
That's the thing. This is the type of features you show off when you're trying to market your toys. Now, maybe maybe when scouring the internet, and the same way that Bruce Wayne scours the rooftops of Gotham, I could not find any. I was specifically looking for the one that would lock up. Like there was a button you hit and it locks up or something. Couldn't find it. Now that doesn't. Maybe I also was.
No,
so
I
young.
remember wandering those toy aisles. The BTAS toys were real thin on the ground. There were not tons of them.
I feel like there was more of them that came out after the show had aired, because I remember specifically seeing BTAS action figures, but that was the late 90s, which by that point the show had already stopped airing or was already in their little animated redesign.
I was
of the age. I was of the age where I remember walking down the aisles.
You were
at that
post
point.
redesign by the time. There were early season toys, but there weren't that many of them. And the stuff you're remembering is probably, after the redesign.
Yeah.
After you could also get some Superman toys.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. So, it's weird. You want to maybe point fingers and be like, is this a Batmobile heavy episode because you're selling toys? Except one, there's no toys. Two, all the Batmobile stuff is really cool.
It is super cool.
It makes sense for what he's doing. The need to take that tide of turn is because of the urgency of that moment. And it is not an indestructible car. Like, it's stopping a train kind of takes the Batmobile off the board.
Right.
It's a believable amount of Batmobiling.
Right. Yes.
Batmobiling
for a bit. Yeah. No. There's a lot of that there. I will say, it does at some points feel like the writers' room is like, guys, we got like 12 minutes of story. How can we pad the rest of this out? And to be fair, they're not fighting a super baddie, so they have to create set pieces somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they have to create like flashy things because it's Roland Daggett trying to blow up a few city blocks. There's not really much to that, so they have to create action, and they're like, well, this is a great time to show off the Batmobile. Let's just do it.
Why not?
Yeah.
That brings me to my next style point, which is the application of deadlines in this episode. And I will be honest, the imperfect application of deadlines, but it does give some urgency to what would otherwise be a fairly pedestrian mass neighborhood renewal plot. I mean, it's basically an arson plot.
Yes.
It's on a pretty big scale, but it's an arson plot. There's no super villains. The stakes are certainly there. There are lives at stake, but it's still just Daggett blowing up about 6 square blocks.
I actually put in my notes, I said it's the good old-fashioned, air quotes, I'm going to destroy this rundown property, buy it, and turn it into a shopping mall plot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a shopping mall, but it's the same idea, right?
One of his henchmen does actually say mini mall.
Mini mall. See, there it is.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it's fine because there's a lot of we'll get to this, but there's a lot of emotional resonance in this episode. So the plot doesn't have to be that robust, but the application of a deadline and then things that get in the way of Batman doing the thing he must do on this timeline.
Right.
He can't let that trolley go.
Right.
There's a place where you can make an argument that he's taking his eyes off the prize to go save these 24 people,
right?
While the whole Park Row is under the gun.
That kind of defeats the point of Batman, though.
But he's Batman.
He's going to save people. He's not going to. He would miss his appointment to save people. But really, we still want to make sure he hits the deadline.
Yeah, because then 6 square blocks goes. But I say imperfect application of the deadline because we, the viewer, are aware of the deadline for all of the show. And Batman is not aware of it until about 2/3 of the way through.
Yeah, I've got to say, Joshua, I know I felt the deadline a little bit, but honestly, there was never a point where I felt like it was super urgent. There was never a moment where I questioned whether Batman would find a way to stop Daggett and make it. There's a weird inconsistency in the way they portray time. So
yeah, there is.
It's not like a movie where it plays out in real time. You're like, oh man, there's only 5 minutes till. So like we don't really ever wrap our heads around how much time has passed or gone. So basically, saving people, stopping the bad guys, and we know at the end of the episode he's probably going to make the deadline, right?
Right. Although he misses it a little, which is weird, but. Yeah, they spin the plate by cutting to Daggett's watch or to a clock.
Right.
But even then, when they do that, it's for us.
Right.
It's not for Batman.
Right.
He misses his appointment with Leslie, which is fine and kind of I like that actually.
It's a soft deadline.
He misses, that one's a soft one, and he misses it. Guess what? Saving people. So it makes total sense. But then Leslie finds out about 9 way before he does. The homeless guy finds out about 9 p.m. way before he does. It's just we're aware of it and he's not. And it does give a sense of urgency without them ever having to actually pay it off.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like the urgency isn't there, and we get the moment we're expecting at the end of the episode. So the suspense that they're trying to create, I don't think really ever works super well. Now, I will say, you mentioned Leslie Tompkins. We do get some great character introductions here. Of course, Roland Daggett is back from Feet of Clay.
Welcome back, you jerk.
God, I have my notes. Rich people are the worst.
Accurate.
This episode, man, Roland Daggett is such a scumbag. He's all about, we don't really, I mean, there's people in those buildings. They don't really matter, though. So we'll just blow it up. We'll blow it up and build a mall. No one's going to know.
I have some quotes, actually, from Roland Daggett.
Ooh, please do.
He describes the people who live in Park Row, a.k.a. Crime Alley, to the business bureau. Like, in his speech, he refers to them as the weak and the underclass. He says that they will hinder a better tomorrow. And then at the end, in an effort to blame them for the explosion he wanted to happen, he says, these people don't value human life like we do. Who is these people? Who is we? I mean, it's a little too real in the year of our Lord 2018.
Oh, I want to vomit.
Yeah.
Can we if we just give him a yellow wig, is he the guy? I mean, he's basically the guy, right?
He's the guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was what I thought. Without going too far down a very specific political rabbit trail, those words got written down in my notes because they rang a 2018 note with me.
Yes. No,
I was
definitely.
like, that rhetoric is
real.
back.
It's still
here. It is.
Here it is. It's in the public. And what I really appreciated on the flip side of that is the attention of detail they pay and the nuances they take in portraying these people, the marginalized people, the poor people, the people of color that all live in Crime Alley, essentially. Money, and I think
they'd leave if they could, right?
They would leave if they could. My favorite is when the guy who's holding the Daggett employee hostage, who is just some dude living in Crime Alley who can't make ends meet. He says, "You took my job, Gotham City. You took my home." And then he accuses Batman of working for Daggett because he's trying to stop him from committing a crime. This is what happens when rich people prey on poor people.
Yeah, it's true.
It drives them to crime. Like whenever you take away their ability,
desperation,
yes.
Right? Like it's not like this is a planned out thing. The Daggett accountant showed up with an eviction notice. Sorry, guy, wrong day to be working for Daggett. I mean, not that this accountant deserves to be shot on the street by this guy.
Right.
But it's like, if you don't know who you're working for, you should look into it. If you do know, you can't be surprised when people dislike you for working for him.
Right. Exactly.
That will roll downhill.
Right.
And today it rolled downhill very violently.
Yes, exactly. And here's the thing about the account. I don't blame either of these people in this scenario. I blame Daggett, right? You blame Roland Daggett, who is basically enacting these terrible crimes, who's exploiting these people and exploiting the property they live on and driving them to desperation. And that's one of the reasons I think this is a great standout episode, is because it does ring true in 2018. And these ideas of these corrupt millionaires really just like building the backs of their wealth off of the work of underprivileged people is all too real. And I think this episode does an exceptional job at painting that picture for us.
And now, if we can take a moment to shift that spotlight off crooked millionaires and instead to these normal people. Because one of the things I have as a style point, and I don't know that I would have noticed this if we hadn't already talked about Joker's favor, but this is Batman happening to normal people.
Yes.
And I don't think about that as often because I've been reading this stuff. You know, I've been riding alongside Batman for most of my life, and I don't always think about him and normal people. But after Joker's favor, when we took a real hard look at what happens when Joker happens to normal people, the idea that this little girl runs out, Batman has to swerve around her, but she immediately says, my mom's being attacked. Like the big scary man in Dracula drag, she still knows is the guy she needs to tell to save her mom.
Right.
He goes and fights in their apartment.
Right.
Like their apartment's wrecked. Now that's better than being shot, but I'm saying the apartment is wrecked in the process. And this woman, the mother of this little girl, turns and immediately there's no mistrust of Batman. Right. Like these people. Now I can do a little backfill. He's been coming to Crime Alley every year for some time.
Right.
Maybe the people in Crime Alley are more inclined to trust Batman.
But the thing is, these are underprivileged people, I imagine, are the ones Bruce Wayne / Batman are always saving. So they have seen, I mean, and even just the one act of the car swerving away from the little girl is evidence to them, oh, this guy's on our side.
He's here for us.
He's here to help us.
Whatever else we think about the man in scary outfit, he just beat up all the guys that were trying to force us out. One of those is our enemy, and one of them is not. And even, you know, if I don't necessarily want to hang out with the scary man.
Right, yeah.
He's here to help, right?
Right.
You see that again, like everybody's very happy to see, well, they're very terrified on the trolley, but they're happy to, oh, it's the Batmobile. We're going to be fine. People on the trolley are like, oh, it's Batman. They're happy that they're about to be saved. There's no mistrust of the vigilante, because down here, where it's insinuated the cops don't go, this is the tough neighborhood, we know who helps us. I mean, I can imagine Leslie makes phone calls every now and then. We're having some problems.
Right.
You know, come down and take a look.
Right.
Yeah, it was just the idea of
this is how
Batman and normal
see
people.
Batman.
Yes,
and especially
was really cool.
Yeah, no, it's a nice touch because we don't get to see that a ton. Really, we either see people who are mostly people who are afraid of him, but usually those are the people he's
either they're
investigating.
the criminals,
right,
or they're full bore supervillains, or they are people who come into contact with Batman all the time.
Right.
You know, Jim Gordon. Your Alfred, Robin, stuff like that. We got a little of this in POV.
Right.
We didn't talk about POV, but I mean, in the episode POV, you have a little bit of this with Montoya, who's just a uniformed cop. But this is it. These are normal human beings. These are people who are paying their bills. You know, they're getting up in the morning and going to work. And at night, Batman shows up and saves them. That was an unexpected joy for me.
Yeah.
I'd never thought about that before.
Yeah, no, I think that, and again, I think that really, for me, that is the real strength of the episode, is seeing those nuances in the portrayal of these people, and also, yeah, how do these people see Batman? How do they know how to interact with this guy who shows up in their homes or in their neighborhoods and beats up thugs? Like, how do they, what do they think about this guy? I think it's a great question to ask, you know?
And it's interesting that from on high, they get saved in Crime Alley. Like somebody comes down to their neighborhood to save them. And we have a very clear juxtaposition between that and Bruce and Leslie, right? Like Leslie came and took care of Bruce Wayne on the night that his life was ruined in Crime Alley.
Right.
Batman comes down and makes sure that lives don't get ruined in Crime Alley. The mirror is very interesting.
Yes. But we've mentioned Leslie Tompkins several times. I think it's probably a good time to mention that this is her first appearance on the show.
Yes.
First of, to me, I was surprised, first of many. She's going to be in more episodes in the future.
Yeah, she's a good supporting character. I mean, she does some sort of logistical work, like when Batman gets hurt bad enough that Alfred in a couple of stitches isn't going to do it. He's got a doctor. We've talked repeatedly about the ear on the street angle, that Bruce Wayne is hanging out with one priest at a homeless shelter. Batman has another priest that they know each other well because they've been working on this project. Like, Leslie is a really good personal example of that, right? Like, and she's there in Crime Alley because she cares about the neighborhood,
right? Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. And she, for listeners who might not know, she went to medical school with Thomas Wayne way back in the day, which is how that connection happened. So she was there to care for Bruce after he lost his parents.
Yeah, it becomes kind of a mother figure, replacement mother figure to him in much the way that Alfred becomes a replacement father figure. And for those keeping score at home, 1976 is her first appearance in the comic books, which is O'Neill, Adams, and Aparo era. I will not go into that because this is not a comic book podcast, but anybody who knows will be unsurprised that this was the group of people who started writing stories about Batman going to make sure that one night out of the year there's no crime in Crime Alley. You know, they're the right guys for that story. And to give that a personal face in Leslie Tompkins just makes sense.
Yeah, and it leads to, we see her enough throughout the episode. We see her make these appearances, and we see that she does have value to Batman. Oh, when he misses the appointment, it's a big deal.
She mothers him.
Yes.
She is worried,
Batman.
like, oh, he's never late. I'm going to go look for him. He is a world-class crime fighter.
And a multi-billionaire.
In an armored car.
Yes. And I'm going to go look for him.
But Mom's worry. She's going to go look. I just thought it was really cool, too. She mothered him all those years ago when he lost his parents, and she's still doing it. It's, you know, just a little bit tug on the heartstrings.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought that was a nice addition. And she gets there's a great, sweet moment. The final shot of the episode is a really sweet one. It's like the framed picture thing, right?
That goes back to the detachment. We don't get any flashbacks. We don't get even any sound effects of like gunshots or a kid yelling no or anything like that. We only find out about this very specific connection between Bruce Wayne and Leslie Tompkins from her newspaper cutouts. Mm-hmm. Now, these are big books, and this is just a couple of pages, and it looks like she's been very important to the neighborhood even before it kind of went into decline. But that's how we discovered this connection with Bruce Wayne. Very detached. Newspaper headlines. One black and white photo.
Right.
Of the kid and this woman hugging him after the tragedy. And yeah, mirroring that with that image at the end of her doing the same thing for Batman is just...
It's moving.
It's very moving.
It's a powerful image. And again, there is a certain detachment about this whole thing throughout the episode. So I don't know if it's as effective as it could have been, seeing that image at the end. But I still felt the feels. I was still like, oh, they made it to their appointment. They're together. And then we go back to the newspaper clipping.
Tell me what you think about this. But the reason that it works for me, as far as that goes, is that this story is not about Thomas and Martha Wayne.
Right. No.
This story is about Bruce and Leslie.
Yes.
Right? We have to know how they're connected, and they wouldn't be connected in that way without the tragedy. But the real deal is, are we sure that Batman would care about Crime Alley in the way that he does if it weren't for Leslie?
That is a great question.
I mean, you know, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
But he is there, I think, more for her than he is for Thomas and Martha. I think that's why we don't get flashbacks to them being shot, and we don't have pictures of chalk outlines in these newspaper
that's what
cutouts.
I expected to see too.
Yeah.
I was like, where's the chalk? Because that's something we've seen a lot throughout
Right.
Batman lore. Is this the iconic? There where the bodies laid. Even the Arkham games did that twice.
Yes.
Not one game.
Yeah, it's
two
always
games.
broken pearls and chalk outlines and a little boy. They even put it in the opening credits when they changed the opening credits of the series. Like, there is a boy and his dead parents in a spotlight that becomes the bat symbol. That is in the opening credits of the show.
Right.
But this episode, it's not about them.
Nope.
And
I do appreciate that approach. I guess I feel like there is a certain detachment. I'm not saying it's bad. It's a very specific decision, and I think it's going for something a little different than what I expected it to. So that's not a problem.
Yes.
I don't think it needs to be about Thomas and Martha Wayne, but because Batman is approaching this whole night as a case, basically. There is that certain work detachment. This is a job, even though we know that this is very important to him, and we know we through Leslie we know that he cares about someone here. So there's that emotional connection, but we don't really get to see them, the two of them, together much because they're working on the case and from two different angles.
That's true.
So whenever you get to that final moment, it's like, oh, it's so good to see he has a mother figure, and that's a heartwarming, sweet feel, and it gives me the feels. I feel it, but it's not as much as if I had seen an entire episode of them just talking or spending time. And again, there's only so much you can do in 20 minutes, and I get it. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's just it does carry a more detached approach to this whole thing.
Yes.
So again, not a criticism, more of an observation.
It's an interesting choice on the part of the creators. Not good, not bad. Just, well, I came here expecting Thomas and Martha and didn't get it.
Right.
And now I'm realizing this is about Bruce and Leslie, and I'm still like, this is a little, because imagine, we talked about the imperfect use of the deadline, right? Imagine if Leslie's disappearance directly coincided with Batman discovering the 9 p.m. deadline, and we got to see him get a little frantic about it.
Yeah. What if we saw it another different take? You do like she's being held hostage or something, and we see a lot of flashbacks to their relationship as
and
he's
just
up.
worried about her. Right. Like maybe he's a little sloppy. Maybe he's a little like, a little angrier than he should be. He's taking it a little more. It's not detached. He's
very emotionally
invested. And because of that imperfect use of the deadline, we don't really get that. As we've said, it's not that ending doesn't land. It lands. She reminds him of his appointment.
It does.
She says, there used to be good people in Crime Alley. And he says, there still are. And I'm like,
it's good stuff.
Goodness.
It's good.
It works.
Stuff.
But it just, it does make me wonder, what would I be feeling like if I had a full 15 or 18 minutes of him kind of freaking out that his air quotes mom was in that much danger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not a good choice, not a bad choice, just an interesting choice.
I wholeheartedly agree. Just a different approach to the story than I would have expected to see.
Now, we're getting close to the end of our conversation, but I did want to point out a little bit of a nerd Easter egg that you may have missed because this is more my stuff.
Oh.
There was a truck just parked there, and it was stenciled on the side. J. Olsen and Son Photography.
Oh my gosh.
And wow. Jimmy Olsen is, Superman's pal, but also a photographer for the Daily Planet. And I was like, this is years before we're going to get a Superman cartoon. And so I don't think it means anything other than the guys that worked on the show are giant nerds.
Oh, they're huge nerds. And they're like,
they're my people.
Wouldn't it be fun if we just that's the thing. They don't have to put that
there. They don't have to.
But they put it there for fun.
Bruce Timm is a next door neighbor to Leslie Tompkins, if you noticed the mailboxes.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, we don't have to put names here. We don't have to give
They have
nods.
A lot of fun doing
we'll
goofy stuff like that. And this is back in a time, and Joshua, I'm going to get a little sentimental here. This is back when Easter eggs were just for fun, not to like for everyone to geek out and figure out how everything connects to the interconnected universe. It's like, hey, this is a fun Easter egg. Did you catch it? Not, oh my God, what are the implications of this name being on this mailbox?
Now, we still did that.
A little bit.
But we also, I was 12, 13 when this happened. We might have still done that, but we also weren't expecting it to come home
to pay off. Yeah.
Whereas now, we're kind of it's not just the MCU, but definitely the MCU.
The MCU has been a big part of it,
programming us to notice those things and think, what does that mean for the sequel? Whereas here, it was just a group of nerds who remembered that Jimmy Olsen was a photographer.
Exactly.
Pretty fun.
This is great. I love that. Well, Joshua, before we wrap up the show, I've got to get your alternate media recommendations here. And I actually had one that just popped into head, I think, when I rolled instead of the ones I had noted here. So I want to hear yours first.
Well, this is admittedly a little inside baseball since I'm going to make a Batman recommendation based on Batman things. But you brought it up earlier. In the Arkham City game, you can visit the place where Thomas and Martha Wayne died. And despite the fact that everything else that is happening to this man in the Batman costume throughout that night, he's still got 2 roses in the utility belt that he can pull out and lay. Like, you can have a quiet moment of reflection in this video game over the spot where Thomas and Martha were killed. And I admit, it reminded me of the game, and I am not much of a person who plays video games. I just don't have time or energy. But 2 of the 3 or 4 games I've actually played from beginning all the way to end in the last 10 years are Arkham games.
Yay, they're good games. And hey, it was only a matter of time before those games came up on this show.
It's true. We showed remarkable restraint.
Yes, we held back for a long time because those games are fantastic. And without getting too in the weeds about it, the thing I noticed about those games, especially after finishing them, I know the guys at Rocksteady were huge fans of the animated series because if you go look at that game and the way the characters are portrayed, the way they're written, and it's very clear that they were making more air quotes grown up versions of what they had seen on the show. Like almost everything, like Mr. Freeze is almost exactly the same.
True.
It's all
now we've talked about how these versions of these characters impacted everything that came after, but yes, in those guys' case, it's definitely they were drawing a straight line. It wasn't just.
It's not the same continuity, but they were like, how can we tell our Batman story with these versions of the characters? It's all going back to Conroy's Batman and Mark Hamill was the Joker, but taking it a step further with other characters as well.
And because I discovered the spot where Thomas and Martha Wayne died completely by accident.
Isn't that cool?
I got a little choked up while I was playing.
Yeah. Well, it's a whole thing. Like when you get
there's
there,
a whole animatic for it.
Yeah.
It's you. I think if I remember right, you have to say, "Oh yeah, investigate this thing" or whatever. But then it's like cold moonlight, street lamp, step into the thing, kneel down, drop flower. Like, yeah, it's a whole thing. And I was just like,
yeah, and it's something you just like find it. Like, I don't think there's actually a mission surrounding that at all. You just stumble upon it, and there it is. Yeah, that's a great recommendation, Joshua. Mine are a little different.
Thank you. Be more grown up about this.
My first recommendation is hate on all the movies, so I don't know how much more grown up I am, and only because, and you know what, that movie, I haven't seen it in years, but it might very well be terrible. But I'll say this about the movie: it features a very rich billionaire trying to demolish their neighborhood to build a shopping mall, and that, for whatever reason, that was the first thing that came to brain. That's first recommendation. That one's goofy for fun. I don't even know where you find that. It's probably streaming on Amazon or something like that.
If you can't find that one, there are a plethora of 80s movies that are based around rich people demolishing something important to a neighborhood.
Yes.
So you've got options.
Yes. Fun fact, millionaires got smart and wised up after the 80s and started gentrifying things, not bulldozing them. So there's that. But
thanks a lot, Hollywood, for teaching them a lesson about how to public relations their machinations.
Oh, God. Okay, so other recommendation. We are recording this on the day that the Oscars will play, so it's kind of been on the top of mind. I do really appreciate how this episode features marginalized people you would not normally expect to see in a Batman episode. And it had me thinking about a movie. It didn't get a Best Picture nomination, although it should have, as a little film called The Florida Project, which is a film that follows a mother and her daughter's best friend out on the outskirts of Disney World. Mm-hmm. So it's not about Disney World at all. It is about the people
the effect it has on. No, it's what happens when Batman happens to normal people.
Right.
What happens when Disney happens to normal people.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. And it's just a film, a slice of life film, just like getting a little peek into the lives these people live and how they are impacted by this entire mega corporation builds this amazing place where dreams come true and all that good stuff. But how does that impact the people who actually live there? And it's fascinating. It's tear-jerking. It's moving. It's a brilliant film. Directed by Sean Baker, and Willem Dafoe is in it. He did get nominated for a Best Supporting Actor. He's probably not going to win. I guess we'll know by the time this goes out. But anyway, highly, highly recommend. That's The Florida Project. I believe it's streaming now on either Amazon or Netflix. So give it a look. It's only about 90 minutes long. Very much worth your time.
That's fantastic. I am less the film person on this show, and I actually discovered the existence of The Florida Project on a podcast en route to us recording.
Oh, what?
So I went from not knowing it existed to 2 big recommendations. I'm going to see this thing very shortly.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, man, it's so good. It's so good. I think you'll really like it.
Well, that about wraps up this animated discussion, Caleb. Where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, you can always find me, of course, on social media, Twittering and all that good stuff. That's at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. Always tweeting about films, video games, and sometimes television. All the good nerd stuff. I love it. You can also find my written work and my other podcast, The Cinematic Schematic, at thecinematropolis.com. I hope you'll give us a look. Joshua, how about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough at Joshua Unruh. I'm happy to field any superhero questions you might have, and odds are it'll probably eventually turn into a different podcast.
Yes, inevitably.
I will also keep you in the loop on any fiction, articles, podcasts, or diatribes I cast out into the world, including my work at the Cinematropolis, and there is a new piece that may be specifically of interest to you listeners. I recently did an essay on the Mask of the Phantasm, the animated Batman movie from 1993, in the framework of twisted romances. If you are not familiar with the film, trust me, it is a believable love story between Bruce Wayne and a young woman named Andrea Beaumont that goes off the rails in a way that only could happen to Batman.
Yes, only and tragically happened to Batman. That's great, Joshua. I hope everyone will head on over to the Cinematropolis. That was a super fun one to read, and it was a nice reminder that I absolutely have to buy Mask of the Phantasm on Blu-ray.
Honestly, it reminded me too. So I've owned it on DVD since almost as long as DVDs have been a thing, so it's time for me to upgrade to the Blu-ray.
All right. Well, listeners, make sure to stick around next time when we see how many lives are left for us on this podcast, hopefully 9, when we talk about Cat in the Claw. That's right. It's a 2-parter featuring Catwoman.
Until next time, we'll see you here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Animated Discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. And if you can't support us financially, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It's the best way to help others discover the show. Keep up with Pulp Diction news by following @Joshua Unruh on Twitter, or find us at facebook.com/pulpdictionproductions. And a special thanks to Vinnie Hogan for our original theme music.